You think you're so great just for doing household chores. I'm not going to take care of you anymore. My eldest son's wife said this and laughed at me mockingly. Since the beginning of their marriage, my eldest son's wife, who started living with us, has been dumping all the household chores on me. She claims that since they work, they shouldn't have to do any chores. I, a housewife, am treated like a maid.
If you have a problem with it, just leave.
Unable to contain my anger and speechless, even my eldest son began hurling terrible words at me. But with these words, I made up my mind. Now, my counterattack begins. My name is Harper, a 73-year-old housewife. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and I currently live with my eldest son and his wife. I have 2 sons, but the younger one got a job in a regional company and settled there after marrying. Now I only see him during long vacations. My eldest son and his wife started living in my house since the beginning of their marriage. We had talked about letting them have some alone time as newlyweds. It seems living together was my eldest son's wish. I think he was concerned about us getting older, but he has always been a bit cunning. He probably chose to live here to control the inheritance after we pass away. I worry that they won't amicably divide the inheritance among themselves. His wife, whom he chose, was quite a character too. Unbeknownst to us, he had been going to a matchmaking agency. His brother got married first. For my proud eldest son, it must have been humiliating. He probably registered at the matchmaking agency to find a better-looking wife with good conditions. That's where he met his current wife, Mia. I vividly remember the first time she came to greet us. After introducing herself, Mia began bragging about her educational background. Maybe that's all she's confident about, but my husband and I were so surprised we don't remember much after that. Anyway, my first impression of my eldest son's wife was just the type of wife he would choose. Neither good nor bad, just that. Initially, she said she'd quit her job after marriage, but she's still working now. In her words, one housewife under one roof is enough. So I ended up taking on all the household chores. For me, who was enjoying a leisurely life with my husband after our kids became independent, the start of living together marked the beginning of hard days. Even though they both work, I thought they would at least take care of their own needs. But it seems I was too naive, as they do nothing. I do all the cooking, laundry, and cleaning by myself. It's like having 2 children return home. Mia, can you help out with the chores a bit on your days off? I once asked her this when she was relaxing in front of the TV on her day off. She glared at me with utter disdain. I think this was within the first year of their marriage. I never imagined being glared at by my eldest son's wife. I was so surprised that I lost my words for a moment. I work every day. Let me relax on my days off. She said it irritably, as if she's the one supporting the family with her income. I was so dumbfounded that I had no words to respond. When I discussed this with my eldest son,
"Well, they're working, so it can't be helped,"
I was scolded in return and felt terrible. It was tough when my eldest son's wife got pregnant. The pregnancy was going smoothly without any issues. Yet she did even less than before. I thought she would go back to her parents' home for the birth, but my eldest son's wife didn't want to leave. I hoped she would go back, even briefly, so I could have some rest. Have you thought about going back to your parents' home to give birth? When I casually asked her this, my eldest son's wife responded, "Huh?" in an annoyed tone. "Do you want to kick me out of this house, Harper? How cruel of a mother-in-law to kick out a pregnant wife. I'm carrying the heir to this house, so treat me more respectfully." Rubbing her enlarged belly, she yelled at me. Ever since my husband passed away, her attitude has gotten worse. I thought I had always treated her well, but she demanded more. It started with renovating the house and then taking over the sunniest room, which my late husband and I used, redecorating it without permission. My eldest son seems to be under his pregnant wife's thumb, doing whatever she says. I was pushed into a dark, narrow room, almost like a storeroom. Why should I suffer like this? I thought about consulting with the neighbors, but my eldest son's wife was cunning. She had spread the word that I was a mother-in-law trying to kick out a pregnant wife. When a nosy woman from the neighborhood lectured me to be more caring towards my daughter-in-law, I remember feeling dizzy with embarrassment and anger. So, I continued living almost like a maid in my own house. Currently, my eldest son's couple has 2 children. My grandchildren, boys aged 3 and 5. It's a joy to see them growing up healthy, but they are incredibly mischievous and noisy. I think they need better discipline. But Mia, my son's wife, insists on letting them grow up their way, never scolding or correcting them. Whenever I try to discipline my grandsons, she gets furiously angry. To top it all off, "Do you intend to brainwash my children?" I was stunned to hear that. She accused me of such when I was merely teaching them to line up their shoes. This way, the gap between me and my eldest son's wife, with my grandsons in between, deepened. Even today I went to pick up my grandsons from daycare and was preparing dinner. I feed the grandchildren first, because my eldest son and his wife want to eat dinner peacefully. Incredibly, since we started living together, I've never had a meal with them. I'm always serving them during their meal, keeping the hot dishes hot and the cold ones cold as they demand. I think it's selfish, but if they say they're tired from work, I can't help but give in. I only eat after the grandchildren have finished, after my son and his wife have eaten, and almost all the cleaning is done. A tasteless meal with whatever leftovers I can quickly put together. The same goes for baths. I bathe the children. I can't join them as there's still housework to be done. I wash and rinse them while keeping an eye out. The couple takes their baths separately whenever they like. I only get to bathe after they've gone to bed. My eldest son's wife always turns off the pilot light when she's done, even though she knows I haven't bathed yet. "It's a waste of gas, isn't it?" "It's your fault for not bathing earlier, Harper. Still have housework? Aren't you just inefficient?" When I ask her to at least leave the pilot light on, she responds with such words, mocking me with a smirk, ignoring the fact that she doesn't help with the chores and ridiculing my efficiency. Even if I want to talk back, I feel like I'll cry if I open my mouth, so I can't say anything. In the end, I have no choice but to soak in lukewarm, tepid water. Continuing this life, I eventually reached my physical and mental limits. I tried my best to improve my relationship with my eldest son's wife, but it was all in vain. Finally, I broke down and became bedridden. That day, feeling feverish since morning, I collapsed while hanging out the laundry. By chance, a woman from the neighborhood passed by and helped me. I rushed to the hospital just before the end of morning consultation hours and was told it was due to overwork and stress. I was advised to rest. I informed my eldest son about my poor health and lay down for the day, taking a break from household chores. It seems my eldest son and his wife arranged to pick up the grandchildren. Thanks to the medication, I fell asleep. When I woke up again, it was already evening. Usually the time I go to pick up my grandchildren from daycare. Trying to get out of bed, I felt dizzy, probably still feverish. I reassured myself that one of my eldest son's couple would have gone to pick them up. But no one returned home. The clock kept ticking. As I considered calling the daycare to check, my mobile phone started ringing. It was a call from the daycare my grandchildren attend. Panicking, I answered, and it was their teacher on the line. No one had come to pick them up yet. I always pick them up on time, thinking how lonely it must be for them as one by one other children are picked up. Realizing this was the first time my grandchildren were in such a situation, I felt an urgent need to act. "I'll come to pick them up right away." I ended the call and headed to the daycare. With only my face washed, no makeup, and disheveled hair from just waking up, I had no time to care about my appearance. When I arrived at the daycare, my grandchildren ran to me crying. "I'm sorry for being late." I hugged them tightly, stroking their heads. While doing so, I felt a surge of anger towards my eldest son and his wife. At that moment, my own health didn't matter anymore. I had reached the limit of my patience. I brought dinner from a local deli with my 2 grandchildren, letting them choose their favorite dishes. After returning home, I tried contacting my eldest son and his wife multiple times via their mobile phones, but there was no response. The same with messages. It seemed like they were intentionally ignoring me. After bathing and feeding the grandchildren and putting them to bed, I heard the front door open. My eldest son and his wife had returned home. They appeared to have had a few drinks. My son, who's weak with alcohol, had a red face. His wife also seemed unsteady on her feet. "What's going on? I asked you to pick up the children." I confronted them as soon as they entered the living room. Apparently quite drunk, they blurted out together, "Forget that! Water!" Demanding and noisy. I grabbed a bottle of mineral water from the fridge and threw it at them, barely holding back my desire to pour it over their heads. "Hey, Harper! What's with that attitude? You should respect us more. We just got back from work." Mia slurred her words. My son chimed in. Yeah. He agreed. "Do you remember I told you I was too ill to pick up the grandchildren? Why didn't you go? Don't you care about the children?" Mia snorted at my words as if mocking me. "But in the end, you got the call from the daycare and went to pick them up, right? You could do it. Aren't you just being lazy, expecting us to take responsibility? Harper, you are the housewife after all." Mia rattled off her excuses, showing no remorse. It seemed my attempt to contact them was in vain.
My wife Mia pointed it out, and I thought it made sense. We figured if the daycare called, Mom would go pick them up. If you were sick, you wouldn't have cooked, right?
My son implied that they had dined out for my sake, making me dizzy with their lack of understanding. He was clearly influenced by his wife, only his negative traits growing. Trying to think of what to say to get through to them, I fell silent. Mia then smirked triumphantly. "See? You can't even respond. It's obvious who's right. You're an adult. Manage your health better." Mocked and laughed at, I reached my breaking point. "Enough is enough. All I've heard are excuses. You've never done household chores since you got married. Do you even understand how tough it is to be a housewife?" Mia seemed surprised at my outburst, likely not expecting me to fight back. Her face quickly turned to a malicious smile. "You think you're so great just for doing household chores. I won't take care of you anymore." My eldest son's wife said this, thrusting her face towards me as if to challenge. Her face, mocking and laughing at me, was so hideous I felt nauseous.
"If you have a complaint, then leave."
She must have been drunk. My eldest son, laughing, kept repeating,
"Just leave."
Repeat. Seeing my son and his wife laugh continuously, I made up my mind. Gladly, I'll leave. I declared to them. They stood up, looking at me with surprise. Then, in the next moment, they looked at each other and started laughing. They were mocking me, thinking I couldn't leave. I left them laughing like mad in the living room and went back to my room. The next morning, anger seemed to have overtaken my illness, and my fever had completely subsided. I deliberately made it seem like a normal morning. As usual, I prepared my grandson's lunchbox and breakfast for my eldest son and his wife. I started the washing machine and lightly cleaned the entrance. I woke up the grandchildren, had them eat breakfast, and took them to daycare. Meanwhile, my son and his wife had left for work, leaving the bathroom and dining table messy. I quickly packed my belongings. Of course, I took my late husband's memorial tablet, which had been with us since the first year of cohabitation. I put all the important documents like land titles into my bag. Then I decided to leave a letter at the entrance and exit the house. The letter read, "Do as you please from now on." I was about to leave but paused, thinking it was the last time. I removed the laundry from the washing machine and threw it on the bathroom floor. I sprinkled ink in the always clean bathroom. I threw kitchen waste in the sink. Just thinking about my son and his wife cleaning it up made me feel a bit lighter. I hoped they'd forgive this small act of retaliation. That evening, relaxing in a hotel, my mobile phone started ringing. It was my son's wife. Ignoring it at first, soon my son's name appeared on the screen. They must have been calling alternately. I continued to ignore them deliberately before answering. It was my son's wife on the line. "Oh, what's up? It's rare for you to contact me." I spoke slowly, annoying my son's wife. "It's not what's up. What's going on at home? The garbage stinks. The bathroom is flooded. What's all this? For a housewife, where have you gone?" She yelled with such ferocity I had to move the phone away from my ear. She was clearly infuriated by the mess I left behind. "That's why I told you to do as you pleased. It was you who told me to leave, remember?" I replied in a provocative tone. I could hear my son's wife grinding her teeth. "Harper, if you come back now, I'll pretend today never happened." Realizing I had no intention of returning, she spoke in a cajoling voice, adding she would even take care of me. Her attitude, always mentioning caregiving, had always bothered me. "Mia, thank you, but it's okay. I can solve caregiving with money, so I won't bother you. Don't worry. But I'm more concerned about you. You've been using my pension for living expenses, right? From now on, you'll have to manage on your own." Since we started living together, they never once contributed to household expenses. I paid for everything from my pension. Food, utilities, everything. I had savings for retirement, so I wasn't worried about my future. The problem was with my son and his wife. On weekends, they would leave the children and gamble. When they won, they spent lavishly. When they lost, they'd come home to me for money. They clearly had no savings, living like children, treating their earnings as personal pocket money. They bought branded goods but dressed their children in hand-me-downs. I couldn't tolerate such a lifestyle. "What's wrong with that? We had work too. What's wrong with spending the money we earn? That's so unfair." When I advised them to change their lifestyle, my son's wife retorted. Talking to her felt like dealing with a rebellious teenager. "The children are attached to you, Harper. They might be crying right now because you didn't pick them up. Isn't that sad?" I sighed in exasperation as my eldest son's wife used the children as leverage. It was clear they hadn't picked them up. She thought she had hit a nerve as I remained silent. The atmosphere palpable even through the phone. You can feel the atmosphere through your mobile phone. But I had made arrangements. "Don't worry, the children are at your parents' house. I visited and left them there." "Huh?" My son's wife was obviously shocked. I had picked up the grandchildren during the day and visited her parents. I confided everything that had happened to them, expressing my decision to leave but expressing concern for the grandchildren. Your parents have agreed to take care of them for a while. My eldest son's wife is speechless. She was speechless, as her biggest weakness was her parents. They are very strict and she's still afraid of them. When I told them everything, they bowed deeply in apology. I was worried they wouldn't believe me, but they did. About my eldest son's wife. Ever since she was young, she had these issues, they murmured apologetically. To the stunned silence of my son's wife, I said, "Well then," and ended the call. I ignored multiple calls from my son afterward. The next day, I was having coffee at my son's wife's parents' house. The grandchildren were having a great time with their grandparents. Spotting me, they ran over. "Let's stay together tonight," he said. We shared a laugh at this adorable suggestion. Our peaceful time was disrupted by the sound of the door opening roughly. My son and his wife entered without greeting, surprised to see me. "Why is Harper here?" my son's wife asked in a strained voice. "Yesterday we had a long talk and got along well. I'm just visiting today. Have you finished cleaning the house yet?" She glared at me as I answered. Then, turning to her parents, she began. "Harper has a habit of lying," she pleaded. "Don't believe what she said. She's known for her lies and spreading bad rumors about me in the neighborhood." She desperately tried to sway her parents to her side. However, her parents had a look of, "Not this again." As we remained silent, she continued, fabricating stories and tearfully claiming she had been managing both housework and her job. I almost admired her acting skills.
"It's you who lies. How many times have you deceived us?"
Her dad finally spoke. He mentioned being shocked by the profile she submitted to the matrimonial agency, revealing all her education and career claims were false. Even my son was surprised. "Huh?" I exclaimed. It turned out she hadn't even attended university, dropping out of a vocational school and then enjoying an unemployed life. Her parents had gotten her the current job through connections. All her boasts about her education were lies. Confronted by my son,
"Is that true?"
she covered her ears.
"No, it's a lie!"
She continued to shout. Her parents sighed and said, "She's always been like this when things go against her." Said, I thought she might truly believe her fantasies were real. "We need to talk about the future. Also, the family home will be put up for sale, so please vacate within a week." I then informed my son.
"What? Stand up!"
The land originally belonged to my parents, and after my husband's passing, the house was in my name. I told my eldest son that whatever he did was up to me. "I need to secure funds for my retirement. You being a father should take more responsibility for your family." My son looked dejected, while his wife shrank, covering her ears. Later, they vacated the family home and moved into a small apartment. The grandchildren were still being cared for at my son's wife's parents' house. My son, deceived by a fake profile.
"I've been tricked,"
he said, contemplating divorce. My eldest son said he intended to sue the marriage bureau and his wife for damages. He plans to gain custody of the children and has asked to live together again. It seems he has reflected a bit, as he promised to use the alimony to pay off all his debts. The divorce between my son and his wife was a bit contentious, but when her falsified background was brought up, she quickly agreed to the divorce. After the divorce, she apparently returned to her parents' house. Her tendency to fabricate stories worsened, leading to mental instability, and I heard she'll soon be admitted to a hospital. After the divorce was finalized, I bought a small 2-family home, a new build. Due to my age, it was difficult to purchase it alone, so my son also helped. Now I'm living with my 2 grandchildren and my son. He has become more cooperative with household chores. He's trying to improve his lifestyle and become a father worthy of respect. When I tell him to be careful with his choice of wife in the future, he makes a troubled face and says,
"I understand,"
replied the eldest son. I'm convinced that these unpleasant memories will soon turn into laughing matters.